There you go. Okay. Okay, so let's start, and I guess if more people appear, we will just let them in. So this is the third lecture on the different stages of life. If you miss any, you are very welcome to see the video. You will see also the introduction about me and Kobe, so we don't extend ourselves too much, repeating the same things. And okay, these are the 12 stages. So as just mentioned, we will do the 5th and 6th today. And now we will do a little game to warm up. So if you have a pen and paper on hand, or just write on any note taken up or whatever you have on your computer, doesn't really matter. It's just take a minute, 30 seconds to visualize or to feel or to connect with this time of your life when you were 0 to 6 years old, and write down the first 5 words that come to your mind. Okay, so let me just let some more people in. Oh, thanks for sharing. So yeah, feel free, anyone, when we talk, jump in with the questions straight ahead. This is kind of a conversation, so we want it to be interactive. Feel free to participate, share your, like curiosities, doubts, if some clarification need to be made at any point. So I will go pretty swiftly through, because I noticed that most of you have some type of self-awareness practice, and that's great. So basically, probably you read it already, what some of the known cultural heroes say about self-awareness. So as you probably know, if you have a practice, it's really, really important. And as Benjamin Franklin says, it's really, really hard, right? Probably you did notice. So this is what scientific data says. As it's very limited, of course, it's really partial about the benefits of having a self-awareness practice. Hopefully we are not doing a practice for these reasons alone, but it's still good to have a list of benefits that we can hope to encounter if we stick to it. So it was more meant for people that don't know what self-awareness is about. They never did the practice, or they have no idea about what for to do it. So I will deduce, since you all have at some point some practice, that you know this already. And here it's an information that I hope makes all of us reflect and would be how self-aware we are. The majority of the people think we are really self-aware, but this was a research done with over 5,000 people, and they could barely found 50 people that were self-aware. And most of the people they interviewed, they were surely very convinced that they are self-aware. So it's really good to keep in check our own understanding of ourselves, how clear it is, how self-aware we actually really are in comparison with how self-aware we think we are.
That's so funny. The statistics, sorry, I just find it really funny. Like the numbers are exactly the opposite.
Yes. Yeah, it's a really tough practice. I mean, it seems to be very intuitive and easy to know oneself, but I think if you practice, as you most of you said, some type of mindfulness or meditation, probably you know that just you can get lost in your thoughts. Basically, you're constantly lost in your thoughts and you don't even notice. So it's not so easy as it seems. So what is self-awareness? It's good to rehearse, I guess, like basic definitions, because sometimes we just throw words around and we forget the basic definitions. So it's the ability to monitor our inner and external experiences, how our thoughts and feelings arise as signals. So developing self-awareness allows us to keep from being carried away by those signals and seeing them as signals, and hopefully objectively respond to them, not in a reactive manner. And people that practice, they can every time faster detect these signals and how influence other people, their reaction, and what other people are signaling. So be more aware and respond more in sync with what they really like or want. So since self-awareness is a process of integration of consciousness, I found it's always nice to see things visually. So if you have a practice, probably you're very familiar with this, it's focusing in a calm, aware, receptive, open space inside of us and paying attention to the sensations, thoughts, emotions, etc. So basically, hopefully, we are every time more able to do that, to access this space inside. And the aim is to practice this objective observation, right? So it's basically detachment and distancing, having a perspective of not being, because many people now, the main mistake, or one of the main that we will now transition to, it's people mix self-awareness with extreme self-examination or reliving specific emotional states. So I just wanted to point out this here because we'll relate exactly to the lecture. I think we will probably have memories when you were a kid or things that you were experiencing as a kid. So it wouldn't be ideal to think why this happened to me and stuff, but rather to focus and observe these emotions that arise and see how you can use them, what you can learn, what was behind this emotional state that make it happen, etc. So more we practice having this type of approach to information and input and signals that come to us, more adaptable, flexible, and not only resilient, but anti-fragile we are. If you're familiar with this expression, it's basically that distress, we cannot just withstand it better, but makes us stronger and more capable, and we thrive better by exposing ourselves to it. So there are different practices that we can do. I just wouldn't like it to appear that, for example, yoga or Tai Chi are self-awareness or mindful practices in itself, because you can practice them in a way that doesn't really bring presence and awareness. So it's not the practice itself, it's the approach to the practice, and you can wash your dishes in a mindful way. So there is a myriad of practices that could benefit that. These are just the most perhaps focusing this way if you do it from the approach that they were designed to be done. These topics are very, very, very wide. I'm just brushing through, but each one, even journaling, would need a session in itself. How you do journaling for spotting patterns and generating insight instead of just writing emotional states on a piece of paper. So I'm just brushing through. If you have any questions, please feel free. I just hope that this will be useful when we transition to childhood memories and states. So another thing that self-awareness practices, basically, it's not that you do it for 2 months and you're done, right? We have to do it all our lives and basically never ends. So it's just the nature of the practice itself, right? And this is the introspection mistakes that research shows that most of the people do, that practice self-awareness, and that they actually generate more suffering with it instead of more awareness and positive response. So there are many, many more mistakes. I just pointed out this one because I find that it's the most useful for the purpose of the lecture today. But we have over 280 cognitive biases that we base our perception on, that if we are not aware, they just detour us. But it's too extensive for covering all as an intro. So I think this was really meaningful. Basically, when we recall a situation that we didn't react in an ideal way, or that something happened that we wish we feel it as a failure, or that had a bad influence in our life, instead of, when we introspect, ask why this happened, we should try to switch to what. Why, change it for what, in the sense of like, why, basically, why is the reason for this? It's because the why questions generally are really hard to answer, in the sense, can be like a biological thing that happened or a subconscious pattern that we cannot access, and just generates more rumination. So basically generates more powerless feeling and hopelessness, instead of generating an empowering feeling and an action-oriented type of approach. So instead, if we ask with what, it's a very proactive approach to investigate, and can really bring us to positive results. So here are some questions just as an idea of how we can approach the change from why to what, right? And here it's a little quote to destigmatize, hopefully, failure, that basically it's a natural state and it's just part of life. And if, like, we can be truly successful only at something we are willing to fail at. So it's basically really, really positive to fail at things, because it means that matter to us and we are trying to persevere in something, but they become positive if we learn from them, right? So I think in the Western perspective, we somehow immediately become hopeless instead of looking at the lesson behind. And hopefully today, when we will go through the life stages, we will try to not feel hopeless, but looking at the lessons behind things. And here are just some basic self-awareness questions that are not relevant for these stages, but I found that may generate some curiosity or some good practice, in the sense of, most of the people will reply on the first go, oh, can you name the emotions that you feel at any time? Yeah, sure, I can. But let's try, perhaps, if you want, I can send you also, there will be more at the end, because I'm finishing right now. But like, to really see, okay, when I can spot my emotional states. It's really at all times, how frequent it is, how quickly I can spot them, and which ones I lag behind usually, that I cannot spot when they happen, but perhaps 2 hours or 2 days later. And yeah, it's really good. I find them really useful as introspection questions, but it's really good to have a little bit of time and detail in the answers. And here we go. So that was the intro. Hopefully just gave some self-awareness perspective of the openness, the active and proactive approach to self-awareness and reflection, meanwhile we cruise through the stages. So Kobe, please.
Thank you very much, Christina. Maybe we will use your questions for later on as we will cover the two coming up stages.
Yeah, I have at the end the question specifically for these two stages. So
after I will introduce these two stages and what they mean, what is the stage of evolution which occur in these stages, maybe it will be very, very interesting to see how the questions are bringing or shedding some more light about the corners of these stages. So I can do them in these two stages in one, as if they are one, or I can divide them. And in order to make it more easier to understand, I will go to the 6th stage, and then I will go backwards to the 5th stage. To make it a little bit more easy to comprehend what is going on, what is the situation, and what we are facing. So I will start with the 6th stage, which is in between 1 to approximately 5 years old. It's a stage which the main point, the main thing which occurs at that stage, which is quite revolutionary from the point of view of the child, is the revelation of the child to understand and to realize that when he feels himself, he is not the other. In the age of 0 to 1, the symbiosis with the surrounding and the response with the surrounding penetrates the mind and the physical state of the baby in such a way in which there is no distinction between the baby and the environment. There is a total symbiosis between the baby, the mother, and the natural environment. It can be atmosphere, can be climate, can be the kind of food the baby eats. The symbiosis in the 5th stage is with certain kind of an openness, which at the age of 1 to 5 years old, give and take, close up, and the baby realizes in between 1 to 5 that there is the capacity to say me, myself. And this is a great revelation. The revelation of the understanding that there is me, which is not you, produce a great revelation in the baby's mind. When baby realizes that what is me is not you, and there is a border, a barrier, which starts from this realization, later on produce a protection of the self, protection of what are the borders of things that we penetrate in, or things who will reject it out. It starts originally from the capacity of the baby to say that I am, which means there is a sense of self, and that sense of self has a certain quality, certain characteristics, which evolve later on in life into personality, which evolve later on into a lifeline, or things that life will be originated, will manifested because of this kind of personal characteristics. It all starts from the capacity of the baby to recognize that what is me is not what is you. And when the baby starts to say me, for the first time, is like a liberation or like enlightenment from the point of view of the Buddhist phenomena. Buddha received enlightenment when the mind was opened up and Buddha became liberated or enlightened. It's a little bit, there is certain kind of a glimpse here, which is a bit similar from the point of view of a great revelation that a new thing is recognized, which was not there before. Sorry, Mark.
yeah, meanwhile, I just want to remind you, if you have any questions or you want to jump in, feel free.
The dog was here. The dog insisted to go outside the room. So when the dog heard Christina, it was here, the ears was open up. He starts to hear me, to go out.
He knows he absorbed your knowledge already before.
He felt bored. So anyhow, it's a great stage. There are some practice in which a person can go backwards and to reconnect once more with this revelation of the recognition of the self, because it's quite an amazing experience, in which the origination of the self, where the self coming from, why the self have a certain kind of qualities, what is the reasons in which a person has certain kind of life traces, life tendencies. All of them are originated by source, by origin, by roots, by the capacity of the person to feel himself as not of the other. And this stage, this is the main thing which occur in the 6th stage of life, is the clarification and the inner feeling of what do you mean when you say me? When me is not you, what do you mean by that? It seems a little bit odd or maybe strange to ask this question, but it's very, very deep. And if I will ask you, each one of you, when you say me, what do you mean? Yes, tell me, when you say the word myself, to what you refer to? Do you refer to your line of work, to being a male or a female, to be the one who have certain kind of life experiences as a gathered life experiences? Do you see yourself because of certain kind of things which you have learned, like profession or like qualities of sports, athletics, or because of your social engagement? This is what determines what is you. So when you say myself, what do you mean? See, then you will see that there are certain kind of layers gradually evolving life, which is a kind of layers which is the result of the manifestation of the characteristic of the self. It's different. There's a differentiation here in between a certain kind of personality characteristics which evolve during life. And it's not coincidental why you have in yourself, for example, a more intellectual approach to life, or you born up, naturally speaking, with more assertive, brutal approach to life, or on the contrary, more with a feeling of lack of confidence or lack of capacity to stand for yourself, and so on like this. So later on, because of these characteristics, you will evolve certain kind of a life qualities in which you will determine yourself as a result of these life experiences, which are originated by a root personality qualities which are there in yourself, which these kind of qualities is the manifestation, the extension, not the manifestation, the extension like a branches of the very, very basic ground manifestation of the capacity of the person to say myself. This capacity of the cognition and the mind to clarify by very basic experience that what is me is not is the surrounding is a very, very, very deep revelation. And if a person does not have it, there will be many, many issues later on in life. If a person did not fully concluded in early stages the manifestation of this capacity of the person to clarify by basic experience that what is me is not is you, later on there will be many, many issues, socially and psychologically, with the capacity to manifest things in life like relationship and so on. The main point which I would like to explain about this stage is that from the point of view of evolution, as I was saying before, what is occurring at that stage is the experience clarification that there is a me, and this me is not you. And as a result of this experience, there will be physical responses which for one hand appear to be normal and natural things which are true and manifested in this age, certain kind of disease, or what we call disease of the natural disease of young age, which are very common, like a flu or like gas disturbances, or like skin rashes, or like sleep disorder, or like recurrence of infections, allergy tendency, asthma tendency, all of them are not by chance or not by accidental. And all of them, all this disease of young childhood, all the natural diseases, what we consider to be normal, are very, very, very significant. And all of them are basically a response, physical response to the young stage of self-clarification. Because there is right now a stage in which the person starts to understand that there is a self and the self is not the other, as a result, and because of the lack of maturity, because of the young organism, the baby will, or the young baby will have a kind of feelings, a kind of an experience in which the organism will be challenged by those new experiences, which will lead to, for example, something which is quite common in this age is the first experience of the baby that he controls his own sphincters. The baby feels, from the point of view of the baby, to have the capacity to contract the anus muscle and to decide whether stool will come out or will remain in, is a great stage of self-revelation in which the baby understands and experience the power is in my hands. It is in my hands to decide whether a stool will stay in or will go out. And as a result of this kind of experience, there is in me a power, and I have the capacity to decide, and I can choose, I can make a choice. As a result, the extension of the inner self grows because of the understanding that there is a power. Similarly, the feelings of the mouth. There is many kind of sensation in the mouth, which is the oral experience. And this kind of oral flavors, what a baby will crave, for example, sweet, which is very, very common, and what he will reject. There is a rejection and there is aversion. So there is aversion and there is desires. And the capacity of the baby in this age to feel himself with the capacity to reject or to crave is another stage in which the baby feels that there is in him certain kind of rejection or desires, which means certain kind of inner power to decide what he wants and what he will reject. And by that, the baby gain more and more stages, or more and more vastness of the border of the inner self. Because of this kind of inner dynamic, inner kind of challenge, where the inner self, the new kind of a self, meets the world, and basically the world, the engagement with the world, from the point of view of the social dynamic in other children, or the way the parents respond to the child, or the way the person feed or nourish the child, will produce by these things a kind of engagements. And the engagements, what they really do, they challenge the clarification and the inner quality, which is originated later on by the inner experience of the self. Which means the self, this kind of a new origination of self-experience, I'm not the other, will continuously be challenged day by day by many, many kinds of things that for us appear very, very simple. Very, very simple, but from the baby point of view is a great challenge in which the quality of the self, what is the meaning, not to be you, but to be me, will be challenged again and again. What is the main point I'm making? Is that from the point of view of the kind of medicine that we represent, is the clarity that all these childhood diseases, the kind of disease which occur can be very frequently we will see ear infections or larynx infection, respiratory difficulties, or gastric disturbances, or skin rashes, or sleeplessness at night, and so on. They are the kind of symptoms that showing to us the kind of a challenge the baby faces when it comes to see about where is the weak point, where is the challenge point about the clarification of who is me. Physical body will respond to this kind of stage, and the kind of disease which will appear at that stage will be a kind of a mirror-like for the patient, for the therapist or for the parents which will express where is the weak side or where is the lack of clarity, lack of crystallization about the gravitation of the inner self, which means diseases are very, very important at this age. They have several purposes. One purpose, which is true also to stage 5, is that they trained the disease at the stage 5th and 6th, train the human organism to gain knowledge about this planet, to have more flexibility and more adaptability, to learn how to adapt to the new environment, and to learn how to change and how to become tuned to the climate change or to physical responses which are true to astrological changes of day and night, hours of the day, which all of them have certain kind of changes of energy. And in the stage 5 and 6, the body will become sick many times because of the need to learn the kind of adaptability, changeability, and capacity to learn how to remain balanced and, I would say, truthful to the evolution of the inner self, although the exterior changes. And the kind of disease which appear especially in stage 6, are very, very significant because they're showing us about the main challenge the person is going to face later on in life, which we will be able to see and to understand through the kind of the reoccurrence of certain kind of physical pathologies. We will be able to see the kind of emotional, mental challenge a person will face later on in life. Now, in the age of, I would say, approximately 2, 3, 4, 5, the thing that we see the most, which is the most common to see in children, is the recurrence acutes. The recurrence of acute disease with a high fever, which can involve many kind of symptoms, like, for example, respiratory difficulty or infection of either the larynx or the lungs, cough with phlegm, cough with hard phlegm, cough because of infection, cough because of allergy, and so on, which will also be followed by a high fever. And here I would like to emphasize a point which is very, very important, which is the evaluation and the importance of the acutes in this age. We say that all the acutes which appear in this age have basically 2 purposes. One purpose, as I was saying before, is that through acutes, through high fever means up to 40 degrees. I think in America or Canada, you measure it through another way of numbers, which would be
Fahrenheit. Yeah.
Yes, I think it will be up to 102, yes? If I'm not mistaken. What we consider 40 Celsius, I think will be 102, if I'm not mistaken. And, nevertheless, a high fever in this stage in life have 2 purposes. One is the challenge of the immune system to learn how to adapt to the environment. And from the point of view of our medical system, a high fever is an indication to a high vitality, which means if we see a child that have once more again a high fever which goes very quickly, very high, it's an indication. Oh, somebody here says 104. Thank you very much. Yeah, it sounds reasonable. I don't know exactly, but whatever you said here sounds reasonable. So a high fever coming in a high peak is basically an indication not to a weak system, on the contrary, to a strong vitality. And it's an indication that the baby is quite strong The baby responds with a high fever quickly because of the strength, not the opposite, which means a low-grade fever for a long time indicates a weak organism and a lack of capacity of the organism to basically to face the challenge. Then another point about high fever and acutes is that the usage of the physical organism through the fever is when there is already a stage in which the young baby starts to understand more things about himself and about the world. But nevertheless, the body and mind pattern is already evolved certain kind of a pattern which the baby understand intuitively speaking. Yes, it's not an understanding which coming from the mind. It's an organic understanding in which the kind of a pattern which evolved so far is not anymore relevant. And the baby has to change. But nevertheless, there is a pattern of certain kind of biochemical changes, which was true and relevant until this stage. And then the organism of the baby will evolve by purpose, a very high fever, who will melt down the previous pattern which evolved and will allow a new kind of pattern to reoccur. Which means it's very evident in our understanding, also in our clinics experience, to see a jump of a stage after fever. You see a child, and so far it was with a kind of a difficulty to walk, difficulty to hold things. The speech was a little bit behind. And then the baby evolved a very high fever for 2 or 3 days. Soon after the fever, you see something is open up. You see that the speech becoming accelerated. You see that the coordination of the body becoming better. You see that the baby respond more in a wider cycle of expression that indicates that it was better. Which means we see by many cases, many kind of evidence for that prove that the organism uses the acute and basically initiate the acute in order to change the previous pattern, so the new one can intervene and go inside and become produce a new pattern which is more relevant or suitable for the new stage. Unless we have acute, the development becomes slow. Which means if we see a child that the parents will say, well, I'm having a child that is right now 3, 4 years old. He is so healthy, was never sick. From our point of view, is a very devastating situation that indicates that this baby is evolving not towards the right direction, and there is a possibility that something very deeply is unbalanced. You see it very often, by the way, in autism and in what we call Mongoloid syndrome, Down syndrome, and in other diseases which are very deep. We also see it in children who are born with a cancerous by birth, that they never evolve a high fever. Whenever we see that the imbalance is very deep, we see that alongside that, there is no fever, which means the baby is stuck in one life platform, and that life platform indicates that there is no any further evolution. Evolution of what? Evolution of the different branches of personal characteristics which evolved from the inner experience that me is not you, which means that me, that sense of me, is very unique, is very special, is true only to me, not to anybody else in this world. And then more this inner experience of self becoming gravitated, becoming rooted. And again, we evolve in the person, in the child, because of an acute, or because of what we call, what we consider very simple childhood diseases, which what we try to enforce is how important it is what we consider, generally speaking, as a childhood disease, natural childhood diseases. They are very, very significant. They are the one which allows later on the freedom of psychological, artistic, intellectual qualities which are part of the insect, which will evolve later on in life in a more spontaneous, more harmonious manner in the continuous life stages as the person will grow up. What I'm saying by that, two things. One is that the most simple disease which occur in this age are extremely valuable, extremely important, although they are very simple, like a flu, like can be infection of the eyes, infection of the sinuses, ear infection, and so on. They are very, very important because once more, they show us the inner kind of characteristics which has to do with the evolution of the branches of certain kind of qualities coming from the self. And
yeah, I'm not going.
I'm not going to turn on the alarm.
Okay, all right.
Sorry, Hope, do you have a question?
Oh, no, sorry.
No worries, no worries. It's just your.
Sorry, let me mute. Sorry about the interruption.
No worries, no worries.
It's okay. And the next point about acute is that they are the one who prepares the ground. Without them, the ground of the continuity, flexibility, changeability, adaptability, and the self-learning process will stack on one platform. Therefore, not to see childhood disease is something which we consider very dangerous. It can suggest a very deep stage of disease which involves behind the screen. The person, again, the parents usually will say, my child is very healthy. As a matter of fact, there is a possibility that he's very, very sick. Me personally, when I see a person, parents coming with their child, usually because of some children behavior problem, like a psychological behavior problem, like violence, or like a lack of capacity to understand the social dynamic, or lack of a brutal behavior, or like a sleeping disorder, which will evolve later on into learning difficulties when baby will grow up. And the parents are saying that this child was never sick. For me, it's a great concern. Two possibilities. Either the child is very, very deeply diseased, deeply sick, in a part of the organism which is still unwitnessed. We don't know still where the pathology evolved. I have seen many cases in children which was never sick by any kind of normal diseases, the flu, infection, digestion, respiratory organ, and so on. And then later on in life, they evolve cancer in the bone, cancer in the brain, cancer in the liver, and so on, which starts to evolve very, very early in a very early stage in life, which was covered. And one of the clues to trace this kind of devastating diseases, if the baby was never sick. So again, the main point which I'm trying here to emphasize is the importance of acute in young age. And then the kind of disease which are natural, once more, which appear in this age, they are giving to us the clue what kind of emotional, mind, and spiritual characteristics this baby is about to evolve. Again, why? Because the main point of evolution in this stage is that there is a mean, and later on the personality and the natural characteristic of who is me will evolve from that experience. And because the physical organism is unaccustomed still to this world, and unaccustomed still to how to manifest, for example, creativity, for example, social intelligence, for example, artistic behavior, artistic qualities, it will manifest through disease, through acute disease, that through them, the organism, the physical organism, basically adapt itself for the future, prepare itself for the future, for the sake of the future. And the point is that in this age, physical organism is very, very flexible. You don't see this kind of flexibility in the age of, for example, 30 or 40, 60, or 50, 60, in which there is already a fixation. And because of this flexibility of this age, this is why the diseases, normal diseases are very, very important. And through them, we have the understanding the kind of physical adaptability changes the body goes through to prepare itself to host the continuity of life. So we have a whole map in our system that shows if you have, for example, ear infections, what does it mean about your potential? If you have recurrence of respiratory difficulty, which is very common, like cough and fever, together with teary eyes and so on, what does it mean about your inner potential? So on. Every disease in this age is an indication to the inner potential who will grow later on. What is the consequences of what I'm saying right now? Is if you understand what I'm saying so far, the consequences, you can say whether you agree or not. You can also say whether you have about it any kind of debate, which is definitely okay, but again, this is not the point. The point is, if you understood what I'm saying, the consequences of what I'm saying is very, very highly significant by the way you treat acute disease in this stage. Because if you, for example, have an acute disease like, for example, a rattling cough, there is a cough alongside phlegm, which is very, very common in this stage. Many children has it. It's a sign later on. The rattling cough, which again is a very, very typical to this age. As I was saying before, every symptom also giving us the clue about the challenge the person will evolve later on in life. So rattling cough, which is very, very, I'm giving only one example, so to be clear what I'm saying, because there are so many and I cannot cover them all in one talk or in one meeting. One day when we have a school, then we will give the vastness of how every detail is so significant. But at the moment, just this kind of a small symptoms, rattling cough, cough with phlegm, which is very common at this age, gives the indication that this baby later on in life will have the challenge of how to find the right balance between sharing the inner life with the outside world. Because the lung has to do with the capacity of penetration of the outside world of the person. The lungs are the first inner organ who has contact with the outside world, and phlegm has to do with the fluid lubrication, with the fluid metabolism, which means fluid aggregation in the lungs in this age indicates lack of capacity to find the right balance between the inner world which I'm carrying in myself, to the outside world. You see it mainly in children who are more sensitive, more vulnerable, more insecure. Also, it indicates a child who the inner life is very rich, very, very, has many angles, has many kind of emotional sides, many angles to the emotional sides. And then once this inner richness, the inner richness of the inner life meets the outside world, not always there will be a language. Language will not serve. Capacity of the baby to communicate the inner sensitivities, the inner richness to the outside world. As a result, there will be a lung, coughing, phlegmy manifestation. And this is something which is very, very, very good to see. And once more, it indicates that there is a richness, emotional, inner life, which are very, very, can be very, 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 with many angles. I would not say complex. It can be complex if it will not be treated correctly, but I would not say complex. The complexity comes because of lack of capacity to communicate it. But if there is a capacity of communication, later on, this baby is going to evolve into a great artist, a great inventor, a great a person who has many things to share, to say, to do in this life. If there will be an obstruction, which means the inner richness of the inner life of the person is not being able to communicate it, this is what the person is going to involve a lung difficulties. And we know that this baby have an inner life very rich with potential because the very small symptom of a tendency for phlegmy cough in this stage. What is the main point of saying by that? If we will repress the symptom by steroids, by antibiotics, by certain kind of chemical which takes away the phlegm, and I'm not speaking against them, because if they are need, for temporarily speaking, to secure the health, of course they are relevant, of course they are needed. My personal approach to life is that everything which exists in the world is there because somebody will need it, but the wisdom when to use it, to which extent, and so on, this is the wisdom that we should evolve in our culture. Nevertheless, if you treat only this, what we call a repressive medicinal approach, which means you will give this baby steroids, Ventoline, inhalators, chemistry that takes away phlegm and so on, the natural tendency of the organism of originating this disease that has to do with the adaptability of the body. So the body become adapted to the potential which exists in the person will not occur, will not happen. And this is where we will see a kind of gravitation, and a kind of a stagnation, and a kind of the stumbling of the person evolution because of wrong treatment. And if we will find the right kind of treatment, right kind of treatment means, first of all, that you understand what is going on. There is a symptom, you understand what it means, what it serves, is there for what purpose, what's behind the reason for this symptom to occur, and what it suggests about the baby. And then you give a treatment who relate to this understanding, which I can definitely say with a very high confidence that homeopathy is a way of treatment which has this consideration, considering that the reason homeopathy are very wide, considering aspects to relate to this symptom in a way which will understand why it occurs, for what purpose, what it can to serve, how to give a remedy or a medicine in homeopathy who will relate to this kind of consequences, to this kind of a very wide state of evolution. So all diseases in this age, the main point which I'm trying to make comes down to what is the medicinal or healing approach you use in this age. If the healing approach will be a non-repressive one, with this understanding, as I have presented right now, the potential of the baby will flare up in a natural sense. There will be no obstructions from the point of view of social dynamic and later on in academical dynamic. Later on also in some artistic capacities. The baby will evolve into a state in which he can understand himself and share his potential in a harmonious manner, which means it will influence social life alongside the capacity of the baby to study and to be able to find his position in school and his success in the academic world in a much higher and better degree. This I say for experience, not for idea. Not because of idea, I say because of experience. And if the baby is going to become treated in a young age with all sorts of kind of, for long term, I have seen, for example, many children, they receive for 3 years in a row, antibiotics because they had several cycles of lung infection. And the idea of 3 years of antibiotics in between the age of 2 to 5 was there to prevent the capacity to have once more lung infection. As a result, the baby became very weak, physically speaking. The baby evolved many kind of other symptoms like gastric disturbances, like lack of growth, in the mass of muscles. Coordination becomes very sluggish, very slow. The baby becomes, generally speaking, with lack of reactivity, which means it was more slow than the other. It was more slow to respond through senses and through a very simple reactivity to things which are happening around him, which means everything becoming him more stagnated. The evolution becoming stagnated. The stage is not gravitated or become rooted well. And this this kind of medicinal approach is very, very common in our society. We have many children which becoming very vulnerable later on in their life because of a stage, the stage of the sixth one, in between 1 to 5 years old, in which whatever they went through was normal. What was abnormal or not normal is the medicinal approach to things which are very, very simple and very common, but highly significant. This is what I'm trying to say, trying to show to you that things which on the one hand seems very natural and very, very common and simple, behind them, the reason why they occur, where in the body they occur, what is the causation for the baby to become sick again and again, are very, very important, very, very important. They serve once more, if I summarize the main point about this stage, we summarize that they have behind them two purposes. One is to prepare the physical organism for later on psychological, spiritual quality manifestation. If you will not go through them, the manifestation on the emotional, mental, spiritual capacity will become to a lesser degree. There will be obstruction and stagnation, which you might feel it later on in the age of 30 or 40 or 50 because of this stage which was not treated well. And they coming to melt down once more, especially fever, they come to, in a way, to melt down, to take away the old pattern. So the new pattern, the new stage will become more relevant. And once more, they become to produce change and adaptability. To what? To prepare the physical organism. So the branches of the kind of self a person discovers that he is not the other will be manifested with a personality characteristics which will later on will produce what you call myself and the way you know myself. And if I started what I was saying in the beginning of my talk, I ask you, when you say myself, what do you mean? Again, the very majority will think of this question as a very odd question. I don't think it's an odd question. It's a necessary question to ask. And the majority will, if you will seriously try to give me the answer, when you say myself, what do you mean? The very majority will recognize themselves because of the reflection they receive as a result of what they do in life, social interaction, position in society, some life attainment or gaining, like they are, for example, some month ago, I went to the cemetery because of some, there was a ceremony of somebody who died in the family. So I was very, very surprised to see in the cemetery that on the, how you call it, on the stone, on the stone of the tombs, there was not so much the name of the person, but the emphasis on the stones of the tombs were Dr. so-and-so, politician so-and-so, engineer so-and-so, a lawyer of so-and-so, which indicates that this person, the main thing about this person, that he was a lawyer, or he was a psychologist, or he was a politician, or he was, but if you are not a politician, what remains out of you? Which means, and if you are not a lawyer, what remains out of you? And if you are not a person who succeeds to make money, so-and-so, what remains out of you? And if you will peel up these layers, you will see that all these layers is a manifestation of the origination of the sense of self beginning in this stage, which the reason why you cannot reconnect to this kind of very, very basic sense of self, which is very, 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 very basic. Once more I would say that, is because of wrong treatment that we had in childhood at that stage. Wrong treatment. The source of the capacity to say myself, originally speaking, is not psychological, is not definitely physical, it's not because of physical reactions, it's because of stage 5. This is why I preferred to go to 6 and then to go backwards to 5. In the 5th stage, there is a phenomenon in which the baby is like an angel. Everybody who see a baby at this stage will see an angel. This is true. You see an angel. What do you see when you like you see? I don't know if you ever saw it. A baby is born and somebody comes to visit him. Oh, this is an angel. The friends, they look at the baby and they starts to smile, and then as if they saw an angel. Now, to some extent, it is true. What we see when we see a young baby born, we see the real manifestation of the spirit within the body, without the body being able to host well still the spirit. So the spirit, the glimpse of the spirit, is still without any protection, any borders, any kind of machinery which evolved in a very rapid manner in the 6th stage of through acute diseases. And this spirit is, on the one hand, gravitates in the young body, on the other hand, is not still there. This is why the baby, the age of 1, in between after birth to 1, is so open and is so soft, and everything which is there penetrates the very being or the very structure of the body without any protection, without any capacity to reject. And the kind of disease which appear in this age, which is the most normal, again, for the one hand, they appear very normal. On the other hand, as we said before, they are very, very high significance. For example, skin rashes on the elbow, on the knee are very common. Sleeping disorder are very common. Lack of capacity to digest, vomiting, or constipation, diarrhea, skin around the anus can become more with irritation. Can be also later on in this stage of the elder could be also the phenomena of worms in the intestines, which is very common as well. All these are very, very common. But what they mean, all these symptoms, they're showing to us where is the vulnerable element of how the body is the right kind of a host to the spirit. Again, I'll give only one example. If you see a child which right from the birth, he have more skin rashes, which is very common in this age. The majority of the baby are born with skin rashes in the 5th stage. Why? Because skin relate to the borders of the body. Yes. How do you know your structure? Because of your skin. Skin is the organ in the body which basically produces a border for you and the environment. At that age, there is no border. This is why there will be skin issues. And the part in the baby's body where there is a skin issue, like for example, the most common is on the thigh, on the knees, in the lines of the knee, in the wrist, or in the armpits, giving us indication where is the challenge which the person will confront later on in life about the capacity of the person to produce a border, produce a protection and a border between himself and the outside world, especially when it comes to social dynamic. In this age, it's more about environment, about cold and hot, humid and dry. Again, once more, very strong element of astral influence in this stage are very, very produce a great impact on the baby body. Where we are right now, we don't have anymore the memory of how the moon feels like, how the tide of the sea feels like, how the stars and the changing of the planet from day to night feels like. But in this age, this experience is very, very, very deep, very, very real, and produce a lot of impression in the baby's organism, which will manifest the very majority in many kind of expressions. One of them is lack of sleep. Lack of sleep in this stage is one of the symptoms that indicates that the baby is very responsive to the environmental vitality or energy, like the changing of the moon cycle, like the atmosphere, or like other planetary changes. Right now, I don't have enough time to enter into this dynamic. What is the connection between sleeping patterns in babies to astral influences? Maybe one day we will open it up more vastly, but right now what I'm saying is that the sign of being very open and being unprotected, being vulnerable to the exterior planetary cosmological influences. So at the age of 0 to 1, there is no protection at all, and the new organism, the new body is very, very refreshed and still need to learn two things. One is how to live on this planet, and second is how to host the spirit. And the symptoms that we will have in this stage, again, once more, the symptoms which are very common, this is what they are saying. Where is the challenge about facing these two territories? And again, it's not so much the common symptoms and the high significance behind them, which is the spirit gravitation into the body, is more a matter of what is the meaning of how to approach it, which way to approach it. Again, the way of approaching it will determine if the inner potential of the spirit body manifestation will become prosperous, will become with a flow, will become with a capacity of self-revelation. So when a person sees the jump, which I'm trying for you to see between the 6th and the 5th stage, between the 5th and the 6th stage is a spirit which is without self-awareness into a spirit which brings clarity to its quality through the capacity of the baby to feel himself different than the other. And from this kind of capacity of the baby to clarify I'm not the other, it's a root ground experience which later on evolved into a whole personality. If the baby was treated well, was brought up well, he will have recognition about the source and the origin of who he is, why he is here, because of what reason he had to manifest in the body, what is the destiny from the point of view, what he has to do here on this planet, and what are the means, or the ways and means, what are the tools which he has to manifest the very basic causation of why he is here. All this as a knowledge and then as a path of life is basically start at the age of 5 and 6. And what will determine if this path, the understanding of why I'm here, because of what reason, where I'm heading, and so on, is something which we will, right from the start, will produce a situation in which this path will be available for the person according to the kind of medical approach we will have in these stages. If it will be repressive, we're going to produce many barriers, many stagnations. If it's going to be a treatment who understands this reality and knows how to relate to it, the baby will naturally grow with understanding of who is me, why I'm here, where I'm heading, what I'm supposed to do here, and which way to do it. Okay, so this is basically a summary of these two stages. If anybody right now wants either to respond, to ask, you're definitely welcome. whatever I say here right now is basically what I call the essence of these two stages, because the manifestation, there are many more angles about the meaning and the practical sides, or the practical side, which is the outcome of what I was saying so far, is something that I would say we do day by day in the clinics, and I did not manage still to give clinical experience, clinical stories that basically express that. Also, a point which I did not manage to elaborate well enough is to give more examples that showing giving the clarity and showing the correlation between very, very normal symptoms in these stages and what they reflect about the inner potential of that person later on in his life, which I consider it very, very important. How the small detail that we see as insignificant, as a matter of fact, they carry behind them the whole realm of wisdom, why you are here, for what purpose, and so on. And the outcome. I just give only one example about the rattling cough and what it means. If you understand this example, every physical symptoms a baby has stored behind it the kind of potential which has to grow. And again, here, the main point is the crucial decision of the parents in which way to relate to it medically speaking.
Yeah, sorry, Kobe.
Summary.
It's perfect because we have a question. Actually, we have two questions in the chat, and one relates exactly to this last phrase that you just mentioned. And Troy asks if a baby that it's brought up well, right, that you just mentioned, besides the medical system, I think, that it's used to treat the acute, it's like if you can expand on what you mean by well, like what parents should do to rise.
Yes, well means to give homeopathy according to the classical approach. And this is the most, I would say, if you have around you a good homeopath like Christina, for example, who will understand why there is a childhood disease and which is the remedy who is suitable for that organism, that will be a well kind of treatment, which on the one hand will not repress the symptom, on the other hand will not on the other hand will recover this sickness in a very high and successful degree. And the main point about this way of treatment is that it will open up the road or the path of this individual, emotional, mind, spiritual branches, which will become later on in life with a higher awareness. That's once more I see it by experience. I treat people already for 32 years. This is why when I say experience, last 2 weeks ago, there was coming to my clinic here in Israel, a grandmother, which she brought 30 years ago her daughter. But right now, her daughter is a mother. So she brought her daughter, and the daughter who grew up brought her daughter. So I saw 4 generations in the clinic, so the young daughter right now bringing her baby. So I can right now trace 4 generations. And what was the life consequences, in which way they evolved. Like this, I have many, many examples. So when I say experience, I refer to what is the degree of self-awareness, what is the life manifestation when it comes to choosing a career, choosing a partner, living a way of life which is more fulfilling, occur as a result of this long treatment.
That it.
And now, but then I would say another thing is that the very majority in our society suffer from this connection to themselves. I would say, if I would have to clarify, the main disease that all of us have to some degree is this connection to what we are. Because if you have the right kind of connection to what you are, life flows well. You choose well. You pick up your partner well. Do things balancedly. You evolve in a way which is fruitful, brings fruits to you and to others. If you are disconnected yourself, you choose the wrong work, wrong career, wrong work, wrong lifeline, wrong partner, and so on. And there are many, many issues. Divorce again and again, conflicts again and again, which will manifest in disease. And later on, as we will talk in other stages, we will see how disease, which occur at the age of 30, 40, 50, are the manifestation of this kind of connection to yourself, which originated in wrong treatment in the stage of 5th and 6th.
Yeah, I mean, it's, thanks for sharing. It's really interesting because I think that there are, you know, especially in people that it's interested in becoming more self-aware or have a better notion of what I'm about, etc. There it's more knowledge perhaps about the cultural influence, you know what I mean, like the current social structure, how suppresses the individual and makes this detachment from the self, right? Because you're basically suppressed, your wishes, desire have to comply to a specific structure you're brought into. And so already these landscapes are very vast, but what I think it's really important, what you say, it's like, even though this happens, right? If the child is treated in an appropriate way, his potential will anyways be available in a much stronger way. So
this is exactly what I'm saying. And I can validate it by many cases.
It's really interesting. So let's see, one more question we have from Xavier in the chat.
I say more things if you understand what I'm saying well. I mean, when you don't feel yourself, when you don't know who you are, when you feel that your path in life is lost, it's because you don't connect anymore to the self basic experience which naturally occur in the 6th stage in life, and because you were treated unbalancedly and inappropriately to your needs. As a result, it produces a disconnection to yourself, which later on the characteristic you evolve in life also evolve in a way which is not tuned to this thing which I call the spirit, which are still ungravitated in the body at the age of 0 to 1. You see, so there is over here stages in life in which we see how disease evolved, because of what reason, what were the circumstances who led to a disease, but more than that, we see how each disease also giving us the clue, the manifestation of a disease, where it occurs in the body. What are the symptoms of the disease is the reflection of where is the obstruction and how to relate to it. So nobody here is a lost case. I mean, if I say things which if there is anybody here who listen to me and feel a little bit devastated, nobody here is a lost case, because we have other ways in the means how to repair it.
I mean, honestly, I think it's very revolutionary for the majority of the people to hear something like this, because even in, you know, like general psychological patterns or development of psyche, or, you know, developmental stages in developmental psychology, or cultural influences, or, you know, troubled kids with behavioral disorders, etc., that we may, you know, encounter in ourselves, in our family, in relatives. Usually you think, you know, some people think it's genetic, some people think it's how the person was brought up, the experiences of trauma. And for example, I just had here one common thing also about relationship. It's like attachment styles, right? How people have difficulties, just the aspect of attaching or creating meaningful relationships, right? So there are like so many models that basically try to address the difficulties that people meet, but it's completely ignored the connection in between the body and the development of the psyche or the spirit or the self, or whichever name we want to put to it.
Yes,
right?
spirit. Don't be shy to say spirit, because we do have a spirit. and this is what makes us individual by the true sense, and this is what makes us so unique from one another. And in our medical system, we take very, very seriously the component that in the modern science it's totally ignored. In modern science, modern medicine, you are just a complex chemical structure. From our point of view, first of all, you are a spirit. Later on, body will manifest itself because of the spirit. So over here, the approach we have is totally different. And also, we will see that because of the kind of symptoms which will occur, it will give us the clue what is wrong into this kind of interconnections between spirit and matter, which we will have a whole system that will read the symptoms, and through the symptoms we will know where is the obstruction. But the main point I'm saying is that it all started by the age of 0 to approximately 5, in which way the spirit is manifested, in which way the quality of the spirit was gravitated well in the organism, which will evolve sickness to become a vehicle and a tool for the spirit, and how the symptoms are basically giving us a whole understanding about the real potential of that manifestation. And by that, I summarize whatever I wanted to say, which is very, very condensed in a way, but on the other hand, it opened up a whole field of medicine. This is what we are doing. This is the kind of medicine we are doing. And again, once more, which I would like to emphasize if we summarize, is how significant is things which are very, very simple. You evolve a flu, you evolve a cold, you evolve you see a baby who evolve skin rash around the eyes, vomiting because of milk products, and so on. They are very, very significant. The other one who giving us understanding about the potential who is there, which will evolve later on in life in a better way if the medicinal approach will be the one who is more friendly. So friendly from the point of view of understanding why it's occurred, for what purpose, and what it has to say about the person.
Yes, I think it's really, really important to stress and emphasize, because it's all overlooked, right? I think I can safely say that the majority of the people, they just there is this disconnection of the physical discomfort, like just make it go away, whether it's an adult or a kid, right? You never would connect the skin around your eyes with how you're embodying and connected to yourself, how it's your alignment working out within yourself, and that these symptoms is trying to show you something, that it's basically there with a specific purpose, showing a very precise imbalance that the system is trying to balance in this way as the least damaging or more optimum way to cope with the detachment or with the imbalance in the internal connection with oneself. So when somebody goes to buy a cream for an allergy or something for a respiratory condition, or something just to spray for the sore throat or things like this, it never crosses the general public's mind. Let's put it this way. I really want to emphasize it, because I think it's really hard to grasp for a modern psyche this connection of, there are fields that take in account only psychological levels, right? What we have the graph right now in front of us that I put homeopathic remedies that we will use in this case, for example, or only biochemical level, right? Just influence the chemistry it's unbalanced, fix the inflammation, decrease the inflammation, and the thing it's over. Or fix the trauma, the pattern in your psyche, right? but there it's so rarely the view of how these things are all connected in between themselves, and what it's then on top of that, the meaning behind, right? So it's, yeah, I hope, guys, if you have any other questions, I think we will not be able to go through this scheme. I was just, because it's, or maybe I can just, because we are running out of time, mention this. Still, you can ask more questions. Kobe, meanwhile, you can read the question in the chat from Xavier, so you can answer this. So basically, these psychological states that are very common for people, you know, like in relationship, whether it's work, family, romantic relationships, that are usually treated with talk therapy or, you know, reflection, etc. We have remedies that in homeopathy that relate to that psychological state, and only to physical diseases that would usually mirror that psychological state, right? But it's too vast to go into it right now. So to finish the self-reflection exercise for you guys, it's here it's a list of questions if you're interested, because this stage that Kobe just described, he went really, really, really deep, right? In the sense of the essence of life, of the self, of the spirit that comes in a body and then develops. And these first years of life, we also, like he said, we connect to ourselves, right? We establish this sense of I. And on the same time, we are challenged to make, like he mentioned, the barrier or the boundaries with the culture, the family, the environment. So it's in psychology or developmental psychology, they will relate this stage to the self-betrayal of not being authentic to yourself, what Kobe said, for example, not connecting to yourself, disconnecting from yourself. Please, yeah.
Can you please, here's a question from Robin, which I'm not fully understand. Robin, if you can please, if it's okay by you to clarify what do you want to ask?
Oh, yeah. Hello. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
So my doubts are regarding behavioral patterns or traits, which one should be, while growing up, which one should be mindful, and so that you get an idea of what you're going through. So are there any specific patterns that could help, perhaps?
Well, yes, let me understand the question. So first of all, Christina, can I continue, or do you want to, sorry, I cut you before, do you want to?
No worries, no worries. It's, people can reflect. Yeah, please go on.
Because of the lack of time, this is why.
Yes.
Basically, we will discuss later on in previous meetings, in the continuity of the meetings, the stages that we will see them in the teenager, and then the young adult, and the old adult. And then we will see how what I describe right now is manifesting into mind patterns, or way of life patterns, which originated from this age, and which what I describe right now is a little bit difficult for us to see, because we do not anymore remember how it is for us to be at the age of 1, to be at the age of 2, and how, in which way, what was the main experience of us to realize that me is not you, which again is very, very revolutionary, because what it does, it gives the basic roots and gravitation of the spirit into the body with the spiritual, mind, and emotional characteristic we evolve later on in life. If this connection is not there, there will be certain kind of continuity of personality structure which will manifest later on in life in a way which not necessarily will evolve or will serve well the position of why you are here. And then you will have two things. One, behavior problems, fears, anxiety, social difficulties, difficulty to manage the other gender if you want to have a connection with the other, difficulty to concentrate, difficulty to study, and so on. And alongside that, you will have physical symptoms. And usually they are coming together. they are reflecting themselves into one another. The physical symptoms alongside the emotional symptoms will suggest about one another. And by that, it will also reflect the real causation, why they are there, for what purpose. The real purpose behind all them is to reconnect you once more to the basic root, who you are, why you are here, and what you're supposed to do here, which started in this age. So definitely the answer is yes. And later on, as we study, we see how, in which way to understand it. How to, when you study yourself, and you say, well, right now I'm facing myself in a situation in which I'm facing, for example, a difficulty to produce intimacy in my life. I would like to have intimacy, but in which way to produce intimacy, which is the right kind of intimacy for me? Because I see, I fall again and again into a pattern of evolving an intimacy who is not right for me. I choose the wrong partner, I evolve a connection with the other, which I cannot really be myself, I feel intimidated, I feel ununderstood, not understood by the other. As a result, I evolve certain kind of intimacy who is not proper for myself. So all this is a question who is, because this connection between you and yourself, which originated at the age of 1 to 5, which will manifest later on in many, many issues. But right now you're in trouble where you are right now. Yes, for example, you are 30 or you're 35 and so on. So right now, how to relate to it? So through these symptoms and through the clarification of this pattern, we will be able to reverse the process once more and to bring once more connection into this kind of self-origination. And by that, we will have a very, very deep recovery, which I see it as basically the real kind of medicine that we should practice right now in our society. And as we will go further in the stages description, I will show you more and more what it means.
Thank you.
Okay, so if you have any other questions, we will have to conclude. These questions relate to the self-reflection about feeling safe, feeling, let's say, well-embodied, feeling secure, feeling authentic to yourself, not detached from yourself. So you can use them as a self-reflection exercise. And then, after doing those questions, you can write down or check again the first words that we did today in the game. And if you change or you have a different insight about yourself at that age after the lecture of today. And that's pretty much it. So some compassion for ourselves at the end. Well, thanks for sharing. Please, if I suspect if nobody's saying anything, there are no more questions. We're already over our time. So Kobe, yeah. Anybody else wants to jump in?
I just wanted to thank you so much for the great presentation and great talk. I really enjoyed. Thanks for sharing your wisdom with us. Thanks.
You're welcome. So thank you everybody for being here with us. We will meet in approximately a month's time. Christina will announce the time. And for you, it's a good morning, yes? I assume. Yes, very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, correct.
So have a good day today, and if there is any thinking or any thoughts, you are welcome to share it with us. And see you next time.
Yeah, have
Thank
a
you.
good day.
Thank you, Gobi, for your time.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for coming. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.